Good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this panel. And a quick disclosure about the gentlemen who are on the stage today. Ankit's not been able to join because he had to rush back. And if we put up the pictures again for the panelists, you will see that there is a picture of a very handsome man on there. Can we put up that picture? Yes. Vijay Srinivasan. But there's an even more handsome man sitting here, and that picture doesn't match him.
Yes.
So
I think it's probably AI generated today.
It's probably AI generated. Yeah, good one. So today's topic is about the game changer in the web gaming space. We have a very august panel here. Of these gentlemen here. I will not take the liberty of introducing them, but let me start by introducing myself, which I can do very easily. My name is Biplove Belwal. I'm the co-founder of Nukebox Studios. We've been around for about 14 years. In those 14 years, we have developed games out of India for the world, and we have generated revenues over $100 million through this studio. Our games are played by women all over the world, mostly Western women. This is a topic I'm super interested in, web gaming, because our core is mobile gaming. And I'm really, really interested to know what's really happening in the web gaming world. So starting with my friends here, Yash, would you take a little bit small time and just introduce yourself? What do you do? What is your role in web gaming right now, and what do you see is happening in this world?
Sure. Thank you so much, and hi everybody. I'm Yashash Agarwal. I am a co-founder at Gamezop. So Gamezop is a web game publishing company. We've been doing web gaming. I think we are among the first few companies in India that started with the whole web gaming. In the web gaming space, we've been doing this since 2015 now. Our business model is to sort of aggregate high quality web games, then publish them on Gamezop.com, which is our website. And the way Gamezop.com itself is distributed is it's a little unconventional. So instead of the typical model where a publisher spends user acquisition dollars, instead of doing that, we do partnerships with other apps and websites. Usually non-gaming apps and websites that have a lot of users, and we let them embed our games. So easy way to think about game embedding or HTML5 game embedding. Okay, so for everybody's benefit, if any of you are not aware of what HTML5 games are, these are basically web browser-based games. They're not the Flash games that we used to know from the yesteryears, but they work the same, right? So you don't have any installs involved. You can play them in a browser. So what game embedding is essentially the way you could think of YouTube videos. You see YouTube videos on the YouTube app, on the YouTube website, but you also see YouTube videos embedded in news sites or blogs, right? There might be a movie that's released. Some Times of India might write, say, a review on the movie, and then there would be a video trailer, right? So exactly in that fashion, HTML5 games can be embedded anywhere that there's a browser. So our business at Gamezop is usually to help other apps and websites increase their engagement and increase their revenue by way of embedding our games. So let's say that there's an app, non-gaming app, right? A typical example would be we are partners with, say, Samsung in India. So any Samsung device ships with a Samsung browser. You open the browser, there's a bunch of bookmarks or like shortcuts. One of that's a gaming shortcut. You tap on that, it opens Gamezop. It's good for Samsung because they get some added engagement. If a user likes one of our games, they keep coming back to that browser to play it. And then what we do is we do a revenue share of the ad revenue with the distribution partner. So coming back to what I said about what's unconventional about how we distribute is instead of spending money on user acquisition, we partner with apps and websites, get users from them, and then do a revenue share. Right? So that's what the Gamezop business is.
Fantastic. A very different take on the way you distribute and the way you are making money. So among the audiences today, how many of you play HTML5 games? Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay. And how many of you play mobile games? So I think the trend is that maybe, a lot of mobile gamers have started playing HTML5 games?
Yeah, I don't think, say, 2015 or 2016 when we started, I don't think you could have asked that question and gotten a raise of hands in the first question.
Yes, so well done. Clearly, we are looking at a trend here. Thank you very much for the introduction, Yash. Prabhu?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Prabhu. I manage product for Glance, mostly in gaming side. We branded it separately, calling it Nostra now. We operate this platform on a lock screen, very similar to what Gamezop does, but the distribution is primarily with the OEMs and telcos. It gets embedded on the lock screen directly, and we are able to run most of the web games developed across any engine, etc. I've been dabbling with this web gaming for 5 years now. My gaming career started with mobile. I probably worked on like all genres. I was managing a live ops studio out of Bangalore for mostly Western markets because India is still coming up in terms of IABs and stuff like that. So, so that's about what we do, and little bit more about Nostra. Now we are trying to see if we can tie web gaming and mobile gaming. So that's the path we are trying to take as we go forward, and we think there is a great opportunity there.
Excellent. So not really completely transitioning to pure HTML5, but perhaps some sort of hybrid. And we'll come to that. Very interesting area. Thank you very much for that, Prabhu. All yours, Vijay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vijay. I head the studio at Hammerplay Studios. We are razor-focused web-only games company, founded in 2014. So close to a decade, we've been into the web games business. So what's nice today, part of this panel is these two gentlemen are our gaming partners. We've been working with Glance and Gamezop for a while now, so it's definitely great to be alongside these two gentlemen. I believe you heard the perspectives of two different distinct platforms. I think our perspective is from a developer's angle. We have been bullish about this segment for a while now. We have moved to the space as early as 2015 or 16, I believe. We are gaming partners with pretty much all the web gaming portals in India and globally. We operate games on platforms like GeoGames, Glance, Gamezop, Microsoft, Facebook, and on all the new emerging platforms in India. We continue to bet on this domain, and like I said, we remain bullish.
Fantastic. So we have a developer, and we have two platforms, and unfortunately, we do not have Ankit right now, who was an ecosystem player. He was from Facebook. But I think let's try to fill in for some of the things that we wanted to discuss in this panel. If you were to look at some stats out there, the global mobile gaming market's about $80 billion. And then, if you look at the console games, it's about 40. And what's your take? What's happening in the HTML5 world? What's happening at the web? What are those numbers? Why are we excited about it? What numbers today? What numbers tomorrow?
I think Prabhu is the right guy to answer this. He is the numbers guy.
Biplove, actually, it's, as far as I know, it's not really quantified very well in terms of what is the actual revenue potential of H5 games, because when Yashash was telling that, when people raised, I play H5 games, I'm sure more people would have played without even realizing they're playing H5 games. But if you ask me, an industry pegging wise, like where it would be around, I would probably say it's about 1/10 of mobile gaming today, which is probably the rev potential of it. But then also, I can always say that, it never, for example, let's take Facebook's case, like since it's missing, and for Facebook especially, like H5 games helps them identify audience, H5 games helps them bring back the audience. So the other parts of the business is making a lot more dollars, right? So when you look from an industry perspective, it's just not the H5 games revenue itself, but it drives multiple revenues on top of it indirectly that we'll not be able to quantify. Because when we take mobile games, we are working at IAP's ads and the games itself. But most of the games sits in an ecosystem of something else, most of the H5 games, at least today, but the model may be very different tomorrow. So if you ask me the pegging wise, I would say the games alone may be around $4 to $5 billion. And then if I look at what it draws in terms of other revenues, it's probably a lot more than it is right now, what we are able to quantify.
So if it's $4 billion on its own, but it drives more from other businesses, what is that multiple?
Again, it depends. Again, for Facebook model, if you take for Facebook, it helps in terms of there is, let's say, a merge game on Facebook. It knows it's the audience, right? So now, let's say you make a merge game on mobile, now exactly the targeting goes to that user base. So that's one part of the business, right? It also, when you play a game on Facebook, it also sends out a chat notification in terms of, so it brings back the user back and creates another session. The multiple for Facebook would be very different. The multiple for Glance would be very different. The multiple for someone like Samsung Instant Games would be very different. Google Play would be very different because these are targeting in a different way. As I said, I don't think anyone has really quantified this, what could be the multiple, but it probably around 2x, 2.5x, I would say, in terms of the absolute what is H5 is making.
Excellent. So about 2x or thereabouts.
So I think it's not been quantified the direct impact or the direct market size of HTML5 because it's still small. So I'm using HTML5 and web gaming interchangeably. It's still small, but again, when you look at the multipliers, say all of Web3 games, right? A lot of them are, again, web-based, but the core experience of a Web3 game is not necessarily the game experience, but more of the community angle and the ability to participate. So one may say that should not be included in HTML5, right? Otherwise, the market size would change drastically. I think the way we see it or what we are sort of betting on is not a drastic change in user behavior. We don't think that users should suddenly start coming to the browser instead of downloading apps. But over the last, say, 7-8 years, the trend has been that it's become easier to make web games. It's become easier to make very high quality web games, 3D games. There's plenty of high quality 3D web games now. And so what that points to is, a lot of times I like to draw a parallel again to YouTube, where pre-YouTube days we would download videos, play it on a VLC media player, and that was okay. And then streaming happened. And as a result of streaming, we now have things like Instagram stories and Snapchat stories, which we take for granted as in the way they work. But imagine downloading each of them and playing it on a VLC. It would make no sense. That when the web gaming industry sees enough attention from developers, such that there's no dearth of high quality content, I think the fruition of this would essentially be the presence of games as another content format, just like you have, say, audio, video, and then textual entertainment. When you consume an Instagram feed, a lot of the content is textual. It could be text inside an image, but that's what memes are. A lot of it is video content, a lot of it is images. I suppose that there's a world where there's going to be a lot of interspersed gaming content, which is really, really high quality. And that frictionless consumption will be enabled by web technology instead of native games. And so that is where HTML5 is possibly poised to reach.
Right. So interspersed content driven by some developments in technology and finding monetization, right? So Vijay, what in your view are the most exciting things happening in this space that's going to just take its zoom like that?
No, I think H5 or instant games, like how we like to call it, it still offers the quickest way for users to come in and experience the game, right? Like, I'm sorry, I could be stealing some of your words, but I mean, zero friction. You can find a large audience. In fact, we constantly see new wave of users coming in on a regular basis or a daily basis. And these are users probably, for example, I'll give you some snippets. of our experience working with platforms like Microsoft. Pretty much everyone is using a Windows computer in some form. And you basically go to the start menu, you will actually start finding games right there. That's a great entry point for any casual user. And I think instant games bodes well for any casual gamer. They don't have to take the effort of going to the store, downloading a large content. Because we live in an era where people are consuming instant reels, shorts, I think instant games fit really well there, right? It's instant entertainment.
So consumer behavior aligned with ease of access.
Absolutely.
And that's basically the fitment area. And that's
Absolutely.
one trend that's driven by consumers.
Absolutely.
And technologically, do you see any things boding very well for instant games?
Yeah, so I'll just give a little bit of history about where I started with the games, right? So when I joined the game industry, the first 3 games I was managing were web browser-based games on desktop, right? These are developed by a studio named Kabam. I'm not sure how many people know. These are 4x strategy games, right? Driving about 95% of their revenue through IAPs. Some of the best whales were playing on those games.
Okay.
Then these games were running in the browser as well as on the Facebook on desktop, right? Somehow, mobile defined everything as an app, right? Like browser was like went below.
Yeah.
Browser usage is primarily just Chrome and search. But right now what is happening is, I would say, it's very, very interesting. If you guys look at like Unity 6 or what's happening there as well as what Chrome is doing, on the engine side, you're actually getting a WebAssembly support. On the platform side, the Chrome side, you're getting a web GPU, right? Like look at the combination. So this combination is like, you can run any graphics now. You can put like, a model with poly count of 25,000 and still may run on the browser. Can this give birth to an Kabam again? So like, I would say like, be cautiously optimistic about it. Primarily reason being the mobile architecture is not built that way for an user. As like, I was telling, it's more of ease of access, etc. I'm not sure, as Yashash was telling, will users go to a browser and start typing and log in and start playing a game? It's possible in terms of very smart product management, in terms of how you land that on the phone itself. It's still possible. And then you get huge advantages because of the technological advances happening on both the ends, both the engine and the platform end. And on top of that, like, the payments on web is like so good, guys. Really speaking, it's extremely good. You can integrate like every payment systems across according to your own freedom. You're not like restricted by anything. Retention, everything is like, once you have a PWA, you can send notifications. Everything, it's available for an app. It's available for a web app as well. So it's about how imaginative we get with these games, how well we are able to distribute these games, what are the distribution channels. These are the things which might play a role, but I think the tech is already pushing the edge. Right now, it's about like how we creatively think about distribution, how we creatively think about like how you land the game in the phone, etc. That's where the thinking needs to evolve. But you cannot keep, I don't think I can complain like I was complaining 3 years before, I'm not able to run the best games on web. I cannot do that complaint anymore. So the onus is also on me. Let's see how it goes.
Right. So access and consumer behavior on point. Technology from an engine standpoint and delivery platform, Chrome, on point. What can go wrong, right? I mean, it's finally restricted by our ability to think about what and how big it can be. Any other trends that excite you? So access, consumer behavior, tech in place, what other trends?
Yeah, so I was saying, I think these are the same trends that are super exciting. The fact that you can make high quality games, and we are already seeing the emergence of some good, large sort of I wouldn't call them moonshot success stories yet, but some companies that are doing large numbers on HTML5. But I think what'd be really interesting to see is one or two really large success stories, like $1 billion plus revenue stories, kind of what Axie Infinity did for Web3. Like there was this story and then everybody else is like, what is this space and how do we get into it? I think one or two of those stories would be really beneficial in terms of attracting a lot more talent into this space. And the other thing that's still unsolved for is the role that a Google Play or an App Store plays in terms of discovery. I don't know if there is an easy answer to this, but there isn't any undisputed platform that way for web games. Not yet.
So distribution needs to be solved.
Yeah, I think there's several platforms that have decent distribution, and such is the nature of the fragmented web that there cannot be, by authority, there cannot be any one destination that supersedes all of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think when a developer sets their mind to creating a web game, the prospect of the number of platforms that exist can itself be a little daunting in terms of where to go and where to publish. So some bit of consolidation there would be super interesting, looking at from a developer's standpoint when they eye distribution of web games.
So very exciting possibilities and yet some ground to cover. For those who are in the audience today, they would definitely want a takeaway to say, should we get into this business, right? And for that, people have to be fairly warned about certain things, right? We just can't show them the beautiful rosy picture, but they have to be fairly warned about the pain points which still exist or those that we still need to conquer. Let's hear some.
Yeah, no, I think we should definitely be transparent here. There are pain points, I'm sure gentlemen here will agree. As a dev, we see this, right? From our perspective, I think retention is definitely a challenge. I think discovery is a challenge. If we think mobile gamers are not loyal, I believe web gamers are one step above, because of the fact that the ecosystem offers multiple games. They can keep hopping between games. So it's very difficult at times to hold your audience, right?
I'm very tempted to butt in and say that we probably lucked out because our mobile gaming audiences are women and they are very loyal. They are super loyal. We lucked out, I think, and they stay when they download our game. They like it. They stay. But that's not true for,
I think this is based on our experience so far working with multiple platforms. I'm sure Prabhu is solving this from his perspective on his platform, and we work very closely with this platform. In fact, very revolutionary, right? Because it's right on your phone, on your lock screen. So there is a greater entry point, but at the same time, discovery can be a challenge, right? From platform perspective.
Right.
So I think that is, having said that, it's a shortcoming, yes, but as a potential solution, I think now we need to start looking at games with better progression depth, right? I think gone are the days where the instant games were limited to hyper casual.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at games from WeChat, those are full-fledged mobile games under the guise of, HTML5 games.
Yeah.
Like amazing progression, depth, and retention. I think now we need to start looking at that sort of a direction. We've got to build HTML5 or instant games with tremendous progression so that we are able to capture an audience.
Right. So discovery will continue to be a problem. It's not, taken for granted that it will be solved. And production value will continue to go deeper and deeper. It's not, like the hyper casuals. It's now moving to more casual, more depth.
Totally.
And people have to be ready, to invest that much time and effort to be able to bring out something. So typically, how much time is it taking now to make
just to give some examples, we've been building like a few big titles from our whatever little capacity. Titles that is taking us as high as 6 months, 8 months to sort of bring out that sort of a quality level. Earlier, we were not building games of that sort of a time span. They were usually limited to 1 to 2 months or 1 to 3 months. Now we're easily surpassing that, which means your production quality is high, your budgets are higher, because there's usually a stigma that instant games should not cost much. It should be cheaper, but that is changing already, right? With the advent of technology, now we are easily able to push the bar and the envelope, which means we've got to invest more time and money into producing these games.
Right. And in the world of mobile, live ops is very, very huge. In the world of web, how is it looking?
Yeah, we're still staying on pain points, I guess.
Still on pain points, yes.
Right, cool. So, yeah, was for web. So, okay, let me talk from developer point of view. I'm also a very passionate game developer. So, you know, when you develop a web game, you're still platform dependent, right? So when you make a mobile game, you're making for like Android, iOS, 2, done.
Yes.
When you're making a web game, you're making for FB, you're making for Glance, same game, but then you have like 10 different integration methods,
Yes.
10 different retention methods, 10 different monetization methods. There are restrictions on platform in terms of you should not have this advertisement, you should not have this advertisement, etc. So you're still dependent on the platform, right? Of course, like I would really love to see if someone figures out a way to decouple yourself from the platform and individually distribute these games. The problems will auto-solve. Auto-solve in multiple levels, because you need the same game to distribute on iOS and as well as on Android, because it's going to run on browser. You can put your own independent stuff, etc. But since we're still on the platform dependent area, I'm not sure how many people are observing Facebook games these days. I think live ops is already kicking in, right? Fundamentally, exposing live ops to the users is where the problems, right? So, okay, I played, let's say, aquapark.io yesterday. Fine on mobile, I'll get a notification, or probably I found it very interesting. I played for like 15 minutes. I still remember the game I'm playing tomorrow on like day 7 and day 28. But as soon I keep playing the game, I learn, okay, this is the live ops timings, weekends, weekdays is what's happening, new content coming, new events starting. I understand everything in the game. It's so natural in terms of understanding once you start playing the game. When we go to web, start a game on aquapark.io, I came tomorrow, the game is not displayed in my first port, I don't remember the name of the game, I go type something, it throws up something, I start clicking, I forget the game I played yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Now it has live ops, there is no way to figure out that live ops exists in the game. So over a period of time, you tend to forget the game and start switching to the other game, as Vijay was telling.
Right.
The live ops is very important, but the platform still have a problem in terms of how do you tell the live ops to the user, right? So one of the things which have been working on last 6 months, my entire team is working on, is like, how do you make a live ops inside a game exposed to the user? Forget the monetization, forget offers, etc. But if there's a new content releasing, or new levels releasing, or there's a new event starting in a game, how do you tell the user, you know what, you played this game 3 days before, and there's a new event starting in this game. Like, how do you tell the user so fast that, okay, he remembers and captures that point? Because I think, and this tool, I eventually want to give it to developers. And I said, now what do you control?
Right.
Like, how well you're able to do it. Because I think that's one of the very most important points for game developers.
Right. So pain point retention, pain point production cost, pain point coupling with the platform, which, you know, multiple platforms, multiple restrictions, so you have to deal with all of that. But good that we know these things. And industry will solve for that. There are dynamic people who will solve for that. What have you come across as pain points?
I think given that, so we have set a slightly different agenda for ourselves, where we want to bring games, like I was giving the example of, say, social media platforms. We want to try and bring games to a lot of non-gaming apps and websites. Our thinking is, if our web games can sit inside, let's say everybody uses, say, 10, 15 apps on the regular. If we can find a way in which Gamezop can be present in a large majority of those apps as a gaming feature, then we will get to the end user, one way or the other. So the challenges that we are taking on is more specific to our business model, which is to show the value of interspersing. People don't think of gaming as just another form of content that you intersperse with, say, news. When you go to a news site. I mean, now there's very interesting case studies out of what New York Times did with Wordle and so on and so forth. But typically, you would not think of placing a game next to a news site. It just doesn't seem like the most natural fit. Or if you're going to a weather website, which is telling you about the AQI of a city, doesn't make a lot of sense to have a game there. But to be able to convince a lot of these apps and websites that content consumption is very complementary. If a user discovers something they like, they will spend time there. That needs you to sort of, for us, that's important to push our business model, but that's not the most easy thing to sort of get across when you're talking to lots of different stakeholders in businesses.
Right. So which are the real genres that are rocking it in the web games realm?
I think a lot of the trends that you see in the mobile segment, I think also holds true to a large extent here too, because it usually overlaps. I think what we continue to see is, huge traction towards, arcade shooters. Because again, like I said, because that we are able to push the quality bar now. If you see on platforms, like, Poki, Facebook, Microsoft, you will start seeing slightly more mature titles coming in, 3D titles, shooters, arcade, action. But of course, puzzle and strategy still seems to sort of dominate overall. I think it's still...
Which is your favorite?
No, I think I think my personal favorite is still board.
Doesn't have to be your own game. Yeah, but the game that you are playing.
I think our favorite is still board and to some extent action arcade games, because we continue to do more arcade and board games. Yeah, so if I have to pick a favorite, I believe it will be board and arcade.
Okay, and which game are you playing
like
nowadays?
Our game?
Yeah, which game are you playing nowadays? Doesn't have to be yours.
So recently we've been building a lot of sports games, so I'm spending more time playing sports games on these platforms. Football and probably games like pool. Just to serve as an inspiration and reference. Yeah, so more sports games is what I play these days.
Okay, how many people in the audience are playing sports games HTML5? One hand.
One hand, yeah.
Okay, well done. Good. Oh, two hands. Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
My favorite game?
Yes.
So, okay, there is this game called Spin Outlaw in our platform.
Okay.
I play that very often now.
Okay. How many people have played this game? Spin Outlaw. 1, 2, 3.
Those are my colleagues, so don't count them, please.
Your colleagues.
It's basically, I think I agree to what Vijay was saying. It's basically, you see the same trends on mobile and web. You don't see very different. If there is it's also because I think how we operate, we see a game, okay, this is becoming good, so let's try to get a version out of it.
Yes.
So it's a boon and bane of H5 platform because it's so instant. You don't have time to run tutorial, etc.
Yeah.
So people have to recognize the game as soon as they see the game.
Yeah.
If not, you lost the user already.
Right.
So this Spin Outlaw game is basically like an inspired from Coin Master.
Okay.
I'm sure that a lot of people would play, I guess.
Yes, how many people have played ever Coin Master? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's a big bunch. Yeah, got it. So are we saying that web games are going to be a fast follow of what has been successful? Or, it's not really a fast follow and there will be new blockbusters emerging as first, web first?
No, I think it's closely trailing. I'm sorry. I think it's closely trailing. I'm sure Prabhu agrees here. I think it's fast catching up in terms of genres and trends. So I think the trend will continue.
I think I'll give you an example. Think about Wordle.
Wordle?
It's web.
Yes.
Right. So I don't think H5 has to follow the mobile game trends. It's more in terms of risk averseness nature of it. Because of this thing, right? because you're thinking about how do I distribute, what is the discovery going to work, retention, etc. It's also the reason why our production value is slightly low in web games, because it's always how fast I can get the game into the consumer's hands, because in my head, my LTV is low. So I don't want to spend a lot on production or neither on improving the game further because my LTV is low. So it kind of puts ourselves in a back foot. So we're like, okay, let's take the least risk path, which is basically, okay, there's a game which has been doing well. Let's try to get the game out in a very similar nature. But I don't think we need to think like that.
Yeah.
I think we need to be a little bit more upfront in terms of, because there can be a game which is web first, which may not even be good on mobile. Because higher chances I would play something like crossword or etc. on a web first than, because it appears everywhere, I can just play, right? Like as
there are certain genres which are more suitable. Are more suited for web.
True. I think, example, board games, card games, they are a natural fit to web platforms, right?
Yeah.
They are usually light.
Right. And how would you address the problem of live ops then?
I actually wanted to just touch upon the previous question before we come to
sure.
this. So I think in terms of the trends that probably will emerge, I get the feeling that as web matures further, in the question between whether there will be web first concepts or whether they'll follow the trends that emerge in mobile gaming, I think if web matures to the point that we all hope it does, then effectively all the leading studios would also have a web version of their game, just because it's the same thing, right? An influencer wants to make sure that they're present on Instagram and on Twitter and on, I don't know if anybody's on Threads, but on Threads and so on, right? So I think the studios would do the same. So there's still going to be innovation. Maybe the end goal would be for high retention games to drive them to mobile, because you have a permanent spot on the phone. I mean, from the H5 version. But yeah, I think it's the reason why, say, puzzle or crosswords are so much more well suited to HTML5. It's not that they don't do well on the native games. It's just that the technology needed to power a crossword is more server heavy maybe than client heavy, and so the lines basically don't exist between HTML5 game performance for a crossword versus native. There's not much that you would do in terms of extremely high-end graphics on a crossword or, say, most of the puzzle games. So you can't do a Call of Duty till now on a mobile browser, right? But you could get to pretty good, say, a Subway Surfer level kind of a game on the browser. So most puzzle games and strategy games.
Do you agree? Because I think you talked about platform and the rendering of that now being supported at very high end, and that trend continues now, right?
Yeah, I think, I'm not going to say Genshin Impact is going to run on web. Right?
Of course.
I'll be totally lying.
Absolutely.
Right? Clash of Clans can run on web.
So a lot of these games, like even for us as a platform, puzzle and strategy games tend to do really well because the kind of graphics that you need to make a really good game, it's not usually just the graphics that are winning the end game for you. And so they do very well on mobile, right?
Yeah.
But Genshin Impact or, like I said, say Call of Duty Mobile, they're still not there yet. And I think same with live ops, right? If we get to a point where, studios that are investing heavily in live ops, if they see value in web and they have a way in which, when you publish, you're not just thinking of Google Play and iOS, but also maybe one or two web platforms, then with your backend centralized, the same live ops sort of goes everywhere. So I don't think the reason why we don't see a lot of live ops in web games so far is because there is limited investment that's happening in web games and that's the retention. But as that picks up, it's just going to be one more avenue to reach your users, and people will want to do their best with that avenue also.
Got it. Yes. So it's a matter of time. And I'm now going to move into the rapid fire round, where I give you like 5 seconds to think about a quick answer. And these are very simple questions. They're not about your personal lives. So they're very easy. What is one misconception about web games that you hear all the time?
Yeah, whenever we speak to any potential partner or clients, they always think instant games are very cheap to build. So I usually get into a long dialogue or a debate with them that no, it's not. it is going to cost the same as building any high quality mobile game.
Yash?
Misconception?
Yes, same means, yeah, one, all of you have to answer the same question.
Okay. Do you want to go first? I thought it's going to be different questions, so.
I don't have so many
Okay.
questions. And we're running out of time.
Misconception. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one misconception is that HTML5 games have to only be monetized with ads. I think there are good case studies out there where more desktop heavy, but very good in-app purchase success stories also.
Yeah, I had a chat with Ankit, and he was mentioning that some of our mobile games, they should be ported onto web on Facebook because we have very deep monetization strategies around in-app purchases. So he says that IAP is the big thing that they are seeing as a trend. Yeah. What's one misconception?
I think we already spoke that you can't produce great games on H5. I think looking at the engines these days, like you can do anything you want on web. Probably not, don't try to build a Genshin Impact or BGMI on web.
Right.
But like anything which you see on a mobile, which is like, we can make that on.
Yeah. So we discussed many trends that are making it happen. What is the most exciting trend for you?
No, I think large-scale games. In fact, I wanted to bring the example of FRVR. They're one of the leading instant game makers in the world, right? You look at their games like Crunker.io. All of us would have played .io games, right?
Yeah.
In fact, they've been silently building a very large user base. Of course, we don't really get to talk about them. But if you play games like Crunker.io, it's super smooth, quick, and it offers Counter-Strike-like experience on your browser, perfectly optimized. I'm excited about these large-scale experiences, right? It doesn't have to limit to a small-scale experience. These games, browser games, are perfectly capable of offering and entertaining a very large user base.
Right. Prabhu?
One trend?
One trend you are most excited about.
Okay. Since I come from Glance and speak to OEM often, every phone manufacturer, every telco wants to get into web gaming business.
Fantastic. So there is a huge upside because there are takers and the ecosystem is getting developed. So that's what you're hearing a lot. Yash?
Yeah, I'd say very similar, but more than just the OEMs and telcos, there's also now more acceptance amongst your regular app and web developers who've got nothing to do with gaming in terms of trying to have a games feature on their apps or websites. So we've seen partnerships with the likes of, say, Tata Play Binge. So again, OTT platforms, you've seen games in Netflix. They do point to native games now.
They do.
But the interspersing of video content with gaming is a very big trend in the sense that it's all entertainment. So yeah, that's a trend that's very exciting.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now I'll pass the baton to the audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If you have no question, oh, there is a question. Okay. Oh, two questions, fine. Can somebody help us with taking the mic to them? Over there, can you lift your hand, please? Yes.
Yeah. So I have been seeing instant games in Discord as well. So do you guys see Discord as any potential platform for the instant games or any WebGL games? So what's your take on that?
I think there is a news 3 months before. If you guys read it, Discord is looking for game developers. So they actually want to get games on Discord, but I think they have certain specifications, etc. But they're looking for to have instant games. Probably quarter or two, you will see them.
This is the trend that is exciting for me, right? So you have games on LinkedIn now, of all places, right? You have those. Again, I think they're broadly in the word games category, but the fact
I'm
that
playing one.
Yeah, and they're good.
Yes.
And they've tapped into again the same, what works well with this technology kind of a genre. But the fact that everybody wants a piece of that entertainment pie that you can engage users with games. Probably more contextual to their own platforms, but that's super interesting to see. So yeah, I think Discord also is like Zoom has games. You can have apps and game add-ons to Zoom, and I'm guessing they are also sort of just trying to make the most of that heavily engaged user base that they have.
While we're on this, I shamelessly want to promote ourselves. We are launching an application. It will automatically have games. I'll let you know when it comes. You can download and start playing all of them.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Never be shameless when you have a mic in your hands. Do a shameless plug. Anybody else wants to do some announcements, please? This is the forum. Yash?
No announcements.
Announcements, okay.
Hello.
Okay,
Yeah,
Vijay?
so as you guys have discussed, the technology gap between a web browser and a native application is reducing to a very narrow level when we see web GPU coming in and WebAssembly solving the problem of using native C++ library into the browser. So anytime sooner, or maybe say let's 5 to 6 years down the line, are we seeing AAA type titles coming to web browser or web gaming? I mean, I know the storage is the issue, but let's say Chrome solves it in like coming years. A game like GTA or God of War coming to browser.
I'll stay on those questions. I'll ask you a question. Why do you want a AAA on web?
See, it's the behavior that I'm observing a lot. Like instead of using Google Excel, people are using Google Sheet, and they want everything to be in the tab of the browser they're using with their signed-in Google account, rather than opening different apps all the time. I've also observed a very weird behavior of one of my colleagues who was using browser-based Notepad instead of the notes and that things that you get in your PC. So this behavioral shift, and able to access on any device. Let's say if I'm having a very powerful MacBook, so if the game is not made for this device, so in browser I can still play it.
See, I think first of all, I think it's 5 to 6 years is too long to predict anything. I'll add something. It's going to be a fight between your local hardware and cloud computing. Right? So, because the data networks are also, I don't know what a 6G is going to be. You might be able to stream everything out of your cloud. You might be able to buy a machine on cloud and you still play everything from there. So you automatically get cross-platform on your browser, right, across your devices. Or your device hardware probably may get quantum computing and can run anything on that. So I cannot really predict 5 to 6 years down the line, but as I see, I am not putting myself into a grueling situation of developing a AAA game on web as of today.
Okay.
That's all I can
I think if your question is around the possibility.
Yeah.
with
I mean,
answer-
sorry to cut you down, but I have developed and tested a very short scene with using very high quality 4K texture into the game development platform or engine I'm building right now. So I see a possibility of scene or later it can be expanded with the hardware. So that's why I'm very curious about it.
I think because you asked 5 to 6 years down the line, and it's obviously super hard to predict what happens, but 5 years ago, the kind of games we see now on web, I would have thought that that's not possible. So we see really good games, and we've struggled. So there used to be UC browser, which got taken down in that ban, but that was not a very friendly browser to develop games on. They had lots of restrictions, and it was a big popular browser in India. And I remember even very basic stuff, like just a 3D cube would not render properly, forget games, right? So I would not be very surprised if AAA-like games are doable in the browser 5 years down the line. And I think a little different view from Prabhu's in the case that maybe a developer would not necessarily build a AAA title only for web, but we might get to the point where engines can allow an easy export to all of it. So if you want that, then the possibility might be there for you to also export to web.
Yeah, no, I think what I can say is you will start seeing sophisticated games. I think it's very hard to predict half a decade now, but you will certainly start seeing sophisticated games, mature games, coming on web. Because like Yash mentioned, the games that we are building today, I don't think we imagined we could build 5 years back. The game engines we use for HTML5 have really progressed, have really come a long way. Now we are able to push the bar. So I think we will continue to push it, but I don't think we will specifically start building AAA experiences for the web. I don't think that will be the destination.
Yeah, I mean, like the catchword is mobile first. I mean, your question is, will that be reversed and will be a browser first game, a AAA title for browser? And then other things follow. Yeah, okay. So fantastic.
Just for everybody's benefit though, if anybody, I hope it saves some time for anybody who wants to get into trying building for web. We had to spend a lot of time figuring out what engines are the most robust ones, but if you want to pick one to start with, I would suggest, and maybe I think Vijay would agree, we work on the same engines. It's Cocos. There's one called Cocos Creator. You should try it. It's the UI of it is very Unity-like, so I guess you'll feel right at home, and even the performance of the output is pretty good. So if you want to pick one to start with, and if it's your first foray into the HTML5 space, so that could be one takeaway for you to try your first few Hello World sort of games on.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We have one more, but I don't know. Is Ishwar here? Do we have some time? We have few more hands coming up. Do we have that much time? Oh, if they are not here, let's go ahead and ask. Is there any other panel after this? None. So we can go till death. Go on.
Hi. So for other use cases like configurators and metaverses and so, we have seen like WebGL being a more prominent tech stack for the development. But when it comes to web games, still like HTML5 games are what at least I usually see. So what could be the reason for the same? And is there a transition happening, or HTML5 is the ultimate go-to for web development? For the game development part.
So the question is on tech stack, ideal
yes.
tech stack for HTML5?
So basically, why there is not a major shift to WebGL like in other industries?
Adoption.
Yeah.
The question is about adoption. The web GPU is there and the rendering is possible, everything is happening. Why are we not seeing that people are building it on Unity and putting it on web GPU or equivalent?
See,
why it's still HTML5?
I think the primary issue is...
Is that right? Have I interpreted your question correctly?
Right.
Thank you.
I hope I'll answer this. So that the primary issue is when we say instant games, we want these games to be loaded instantly. The difference we see between games made in Cocos versus, let's say, Unity that we port to through WebGL is the fact that the data, the file size of the Unity WebGL game will be much higher than the native Cocos game. So with Cocos, I'm able to build games that are less than 5 MB. With Unity, I'm not able to, right? So that's the major difference. So there's a reason why we stick to, if we need a browser-first experience, there's a reason we stick to game engines like Cocos, which is far more efficient, that allows us to deploy these games under the designated file limit. Because platforms like Facebook does have that initial transfer limit restriction, because your game, no matter what, needs to load under 10 seconds, for example. Because again, we live in an era where audience are not that patient. Users, if the game takes more than 10-15 seconds, they are basically going to close the game and then probably switch to another game. So that's the primary motivator.
I'll slightly differ from Vijay's point. I think, so though we said WebAssembly and GPU support, I think WebAssembly is Unity 6, which is 2 months old. The stable version was about a month old, I guess, on Unity side. On the GPU side, I think probably about 16% of the browsers have GPU support, because the OS is upgraded only for 16% of the Android phones yet, or like, so you're still looking at a time frame, like, to reach. And the point on the size of the game itself, I think, I mean, I'm not, see, if you ask me whether JavaScript is going to go away, definitely not. JavaScript engines will stay. right? What we're talking is in addition to the JavaScript engine, you get like, it's not like, okay, it's a choice as a studio you make. It's a kind of business you want to build. Like the Biplove was asking questions, should a game build an in-depth game with live ops, etc., running the best, and I'll give the best textures, I'll give the best shaders, etc. Then you're trying to look for a little bit more sophisticated engine. But if you're trying to build a game design which is extremely in-depth, but not looking at the production, I wouldn't say production, there's a graphic value of the game, like no VFX and animation, which can be toned down fine. But my game itself has a lot of depth, then you're probably going to choose JavaScript as an engine. So it's as what do you want to do, that should drive your technology choice. Like just because there's a technology exists, don't try to approach the technology. What we are trying to say is, these are becoming available, guys, right? So in case if you're thinking of an idea before, and if you're getting restricted because the tools are not available, they are slowly starting to available now. So it's up to you whether you want to adopt that or you want to go to a JavaScript tool. It's your choice basically. Like, it's not like the trend is going to be this way or the other way. They all will exist. There's no technology which is going to vanish off. Even JavaScript engines will keep improving on their own. Similarly, while WebGL is also going to improve on their own.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? Oh, we have two more? Sure.
So with how cloud gaming is becoming a prevalent thing, especially with NVIDIA pushing new changes to their cloud gaming service, what do you think cloud gaming in future would affect web games in general, with how I can stream AAA titles on my phone? How would it affect web games? Like, what do you think?
Are you asking cloud versus web?
Is cloud gaming an adversary to web gaming? Is it a formidable, sort of an adversary? And how is it going to impact? Favorably, unfavorably, or it's going to be synergistic?
The economics are very, very different, and I don't think we have time to discuss that economics. I don't think anything is going to kill anything, by the way. Because if you look at, today at least I can define the audience who play cloud gaming versus the audience who play a web game. There is not even a single, probably one user overlap. But again, I cannot really comment 3 years down the line when these comes up and the cloud cost goes down. There could be a tussle. But today, as of now, I don't see them as like one eating up each other. Like, they'll exist on their own. You have enough user base to serve both. But cloud gaming economics are very, very different. If you're approaching cloud, approach very, very carefully.
I also think that if you talk about the impact of that on web gaming, I mean, the way we see web gaming is that it's a way to drive frictionless gaming. So cloud gaming is just going to be an additional, like if there's more adoption, it's going to be immensely beneficial because then these platforms, as an HTML5 gaming platform, our endeavor is to always offer better games. If we were able to partner with some developers who had really high quality cloud gaming experiences, then that would just overall increase the value of our platform to the end user. Because to the end user, what matters is how good the game is to play, right? So I think it works really well in their favor. But yeah, you have to think of, while cloud gaming makes it cheaper for the end user on a lower end device to consume that game, that cost is not going away. The cost is sort of borne by the game developer in the server-side rendering. So it's not like there's a portion of the cost that's just taken away from the chain. The cost is just shifted. So somebody who's making an HTML5 game might not see enough value in having the same thing using the cloud gaming technology, because why do I bear that extra cost? There's no value added. Like the device can very well render that game and I don't have any reason to take that add-on cost on my server. So I think the kind of entrants in the cloud gaming space will also mostly be those players who want, those gaming companies who want to tap into that audience, but also have a kind of game where they're okay with bearing that additional cost because maybe the upside of the in-app purchases or whatever else the monetization is high enough to still make it a profitable equation for them.
So a lot depends on the economics and your intended outcomes. If you're just trying to have frictionless sort of an experience, just go for HTML5. If there is more maybe immersive gameplay that you want and so on and so forth, but an economics permits, you would typically look at cloud gaming. So as per Prabhu, they are two very different spaces. Same for Yash. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So we have another hand coming up there, but here's a large screen telling me that our game is up. Okay, it's a red one there, game's up. We'll take one last question with the permission of the audience. I know it's getting late, but since there is interest, we'll probably entertain one last question.
Yeah, so I heard from you guys that retention is a challenge, right? And I personally also feel that it is something that every web game developer will be facing, right? So also with respect to discovery, also it is clearly a problem. Have you guys have seen any particular category in which the retention seems to be high for the web games? And also, do you guys have any tactic or a mental model that you, from your experience, that you have in mind, which improves this?
Shorten the question. Category where retention problem has been solved, right? And any other mental model to approach solving this problem, right? Got.
Yeah, I could give a short answer. So to what we see is again like the very strategy puzzle games effectively, again, because they don't necessarily depend on your graphic. And so you can have decent graphics on web, but they're not, again, your Genshin Impact or so on and so forth, right? So those nature of games, and a mental model is usually, if at least what we're trying to go for now, it's not fully proven as a hypothesis, but if you can really get the user invested in the game. For example, I was showing both of Raghu and Vijay a game that we are doing now, which is a chef tycoon. So you're building a restaurant of sorts. But when you get invested, like you've created that machine, you've served a few customers, you've gathered some cash, you really want to expand your restaurant. So when you get invested in the game, in that loop, as compared to, say, I don't know, let's say if there's a crossword, for the lack of a better example, you're not necessarily building onto something of your own, something very personal every time you play. Whereas in some games you could build, and so therefore obviously that works well for retention. That's not just to HTML5, that works on native just the same. So
I'm glad you mentioned the mental model that involves food and chef, that because that's what we do a lot. Thanks for that. But does it answer your question? Get the user, get the player invested.
Yeah, so with respect to web games, is there any particular tactic that you guys, because a lot of experience in the industry, have come across?
Vijay, as a developer.
Could you relay the question back?
Yeah, so the mental model to get the player invested so that retention problem is solved. They come back again and again. Have you used any tactics yourself in your games, or have you seen any in the marketplace which is a best practice that you may want to refer?
No, I think honestly we continue to crack this problem on a very day-to-day basis. The games that starts to work, of course, you know, the law of average has to kick in. When we deploy 10, 20 games into a platform, we start seeing which are the titles that work. So the ones that start to work, of course, we start doing some amount of live ops, right? And then obviously we try and, based on the platform, we try and work with them closely to see if they are able to give us sort of a spotlight or you know, some sort of a focus where players are able to see what content has been updated. And that delivery mechanism is what I believe Prabhu was also mentioning. So that delivery mechanism is what I think at a platform level, all of them are trying to crack. But the games that start to work, of course, we try to revisit the title. We try to add more content to hopefully make it better.
Right. I'm not a specialist on web games, but if you need anything on the mobile piece, I'll be available.
I'll just give you one viewpoint on that. So it's like, see, definitely some genres work better. It's like, as Yashash was telling, no, the puzzle, the merge kind of genre works better. But it's not about the genre, I would say, per se, because it's like, see, there are a few things you have to keep in mind in terms of when it comes to web, or for any game for the matter, web more and more, right? The game has to just load.
Yeah.
Right, first. The game cannot have a tutorial, but the user has to understand what he has to do first in the game. So, and then I'm able to make my first game complete without any help from the game itself, right? If the game is constructed like that. Because you get all the liberty in a mobile game where I can run tutorial, etc. I can teach you. So you're not going to get all the liberty because the next game is a click away. So these are some things you have to take care of fundamentals. But the huge advantage you get in H5 games is like you can just revise over the air. Like it's not like an app update is required, anything is required. You can just keep revising over the air. So you can, if it doesn't work, you test tomorrow, you test tomorrow, you test tomorrow. So you get like extremely fast testing when it comes to H5 compared to that. So you're like, there are fundamentals set, then keep revising till you achieve your goal. The most important point is you have to know when to drop. I'm not going to put more effort on this because you're just going to be probably spending a lot more time correcting things which are not going to work. But that's the point you have to realize it's not going to work. So it's not, I don't think you should be like really focusing on genre per se. It's more about like, people are people. Web, mobile, desktop, etc. If you can give them a racing game in India and any other platform, they just play. Right? So, but it's not going to be any different. It's about like the fundamentals, understand how it works, web versus mobile versus desktop, how very much people are ready to wait, etc., etc. Those are the problems you have to solve, not really in terms of which should I pick a genre, etc. They go with your own creativity. So,
yeah, I think just to add to that, that's a great point because we have witnessed it ourselves recently. Sometimes the game that we produce for months together doesn't work, but there's a game that is, like you said, loads quickly, zero friction, and then the audience enjoy that, right? Some of our arcade games that we would have only spent a month or two does wonders at times because the audience finds it easier, relatable, they're able to get in. Sometimes the conventional wisdom doesn't work there. Like you don't want to bore them with a very long first-time user experience. Like as long as they get the crux of it, they start enjoying it.
And that's a great tip. So I think we've overrun our time by a huge margin. I'm glad that we were the last panel, so nobody is really breathing down our neck. We continued, we finished all the questions. Web games are here to stay. There are fantastic trends that are driving the growth. There are pain points that we need to solve. I think we discussed all of those. Some are tricks and, tricks and magics that we can do to make things work. Thank you, gentlemen. It was a pleasure to have you on this panel. Thank you, audience. You've been fantastic. Thank you so much for your attention and for staying back for so long. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.